So this is the javelina that Marcus shot, and we got 2 of them. And this one we're going to make something called pozole verde. So it's a green pozole, and pozole is a Mexican stew. Most people in America will have had the red kind. That there's also a green kind, and the green kind does really well with lighter colored meats like this. And a javelina is really, from a cook's perspective, more or less like a pig. And the cuts that I want for this stew mostly are the front legs. And you don't need a whole lot of precision with this, because this is going to be pulled meat. Just going to work your knife around the bones. So one shoulder. If you are working with any animal, especially a javelina, there's a scent gland that lives in the skin right around here. And this javelina gets a bad reputation. They call them skunk pigs. And the reason is there's this scent gland that you'll never see if you skin the animal properly. Like, this animal just smells like a pig. If you nick that gland, however, and you get the gland juice, for lack of a better term, on things, it will permeate the meat, and then the meat will stink. So if that happens, stop what you're doing, wash your hands, watch your knife, and then wipe down any area that got hit with that stuff with a little bit of vinegar, and then move on. I butchered a bunch of javelina, and that's never happened to me, so you kind of have to want to hit it. So one tip, every animal, including you, your hind legs are attached to the ball and socket joint. So when you're removing it, you go for this ball and socket joint, which is right here, and you're cutting around to find where it opens up, like right there. And then after that, everything is all gravity. So we want as much of this as we can get. So we're just going to run along bones. We can probably get some more off of this, certainly the back strap, but we don't need it for the stew that we're making today. Now, you see how much I'm salting this? That's about right. The biggest difference, well, there's 2 big differences between what we do in restaurants and what people do at home. One, we salt food correctly, which is to say several times during the point where it's cooked. Right here in the beginning, we'll salt it somewhere as this stew is coming together, and then we'll, if it needs it, add a little bit of salt right at the end. So when you add salt in different times, it makes food taste more like itself. If you add all the salt at the end, you pick up salt, and you don't pick up the more flavors that you built over the last 2-3 hours in a stew. So that's another tip. The second thing that we do in restaurants that most people don't do at home, we use a lot of fat. We use a ton of butter, probably more oil than you think. We'll throw some bacon fat in there here and there, and it's just the little bit of extra oomph to a dish, because you're going out for a special night, makes our food a little bit more memorable in many cases. So that's sort of a little secret sauce from behind the restaurant kitchen. So you could brown this in a pan, you could brown it in the oven, but since it's Arizona and it's nice out, and we have a grill that's cooking mesquite, which I can't think of a more Arizona wood to cook over, we're going to make this all over the open fire. A javelina. Jenga!
How long are you letting that on there for?
Until it's done. So you cook it until it's done, and then you stop cooking it. Well, I mean, in all seriousness, you never know. I don't know how hot the grill is. I don't know. We've got a lot on it. What I wanted is to be nice and brown and look good and everything. So it could take anywhere from 10 minutes to 40 minutes. I mean, we'll find out. So. So this is kind of what you want right here. It doesn't matter if it's a little overcooked, because that char is gonna come out in your stew, and it's gonna mellow out, and it's gonna add an entire new layer of flavor. One of the secrets of good Mexican cooking is this char. It's a certain thing that you'll get in like really good Mexican food that you're like, what is that? What is that? It's this. It's a little bit of char. Yeah, we're getting there. you know, any kind of stock will do, and it's not going to be all stock, but it boosts the stew a little bit. Like it would be kind of expensive to use, 2 gallons of stock. You don't really need to because the bones and the meat are going to add to the stew itself. But it helps sort of add one more layer of flavor. This is salsa verde in a jar, which I normally would not ever use, but I can't find actual tomatillos. So basically it's a tomatilla salsa, and tomatillos are kind of a big deal in this green pozole that I'm making. And so this is me adapting and overcoming. One little thrifty thing that you can do is, like, when you've got still a little bit of flavor in here, fill it with water and then pour it in the stock. So we're going to put this right on the grill and get it a little blackened up, and so that the garlic is going to cook inside. We're going to use that in the stew, and then we're going to cut these onions. You notice these are white onions. Mexican food tends to use either white or red onions. For whatever reason, they don't use yellow onions that often. It's not a big deal, but if you got white onions, use white onions. Put this right on the coals so that we can get a little bit of blackening. So our next trick is to get big old bones in those teeny little pots that we have available to us. So there's going to be some knives involved. It's been a while since I've cut a javelina apart, so sometimes I forget where the joint is. But you see all this char? You want this. This is good stuff. This is stuff you want in your stew. And yes, these are hot, by the way. When you're a cook, you get asbestos fingers.
Do you need a cover on these?
Yeah, that'd be great. So the only thing that goes in now is we've got those onions and garlic charring on the outside. So when they get a nice sort of char layer on it, we'll chop them up, throw them in the pot. And then once the pot comes to a simmer, we drop the heat to very, very low. And you want it to just kind of shimmy. You don't really want it to boil. You don't want it to really bubble much. Just kind of shimmy and just cook super gentle. And it's 220, and we don't have to eat until 7. So we've got all the time in the world, so you can let this thing go really super slow. If you wanted to, and you were doing this at home, you could do it in a crock pot or any kind of slow cooker. So it's actually quite a good thing to do, where you get everything prepped, throw it in the slow cooker, and then go to work, and then it's ready when you come home. These are some roasted green chilies. We're going to go in the pozole. We added some hominy, which is it's corn. So it's a special kind of corn that has been nixtamalized.
It's big in the top.
Is it?
It's not. It's not. It's a Mexican like that. Water bowl today. Sauce.
That's not one of the best smells out there. I don't know what it is.
Some people hate it.
Really?
Mm-hmm. All right. So you got that.
His dad was nearly.
So these are chili piquin. They're wild chilies. They're actually a wild chili a little bit east of here. So they're super spicy, but it's like boom, and then it's gone. So it like punches you right in the face and then it goes away. All right, surf's up.
Surf's up.
So this is pozole verde. So it's a green pozole, and a pozole is just a kind of a Mexican stew. And as you can see, it's got javelina in it, and green chilies, and charred onions, and garlic. And then the white corn is hominy. And the cool thing about this is you can use almost any meat. So I would use, I have a recipe for this in my next cookbook, Pheasant Quail Cottontail, and I mainly use pheasant for it, but you can use wild turkey, you can use quail, you can use rabbit, and here we use javelina. And it's basically a very simple stew that you can choose your own adventure on afterwards. So you can add cheese, You can add tortilla chips, and since this is a green pozole, all of the things that you add are green. So green onions, cilantro, serrano chilies, and then these are chili piquins, the wild chilies that are pickled. So it adds a little bit of acidity and a little bit of heat as well. So anybody can kind of mix and match, and away we go.
Spanish-ish. Oh, okay. Huge Spanish village.
Look at that.
It's beautiful.
Is your mouth watering just looking at it?
We're about an hour.
Mine is.
Chupacabra.
That's freaking good.
Chupacabra's pretty
There's a ton of flavor. Anyone who says that Javelina can be made to be palatable
Spanish-ish. Oh, okay. Huge Spanish.
has never eaten this.